Imagine waking up to headlines that the FBI, the very agency tasked with protecting national security, might have had more involvement during the January 6th Capitol riot than we've been told. That's exactly what happened in March 2025, when FBI Director Kash Patel turned over documents showing over 24 confidential human sources were embedded at the Capitol during the chaosome, even entering restricted areas. Now, isn't it wild to think about? For years, the FBI maintained that their role was limited, but suddenly, the script flips. What does it mean when an agency's own operatives are potentially intertwined with the events they're supposed to stop? This isn't just a sensational headline, it's a seismic shift that puts the FBI's transparency and credibility under the microscope. We're talking about a scenario where surveillance, one of the FBI's core competencies, becomes a double-edged sword. Let me tell you, this isn't just about what happened on January 6th. It's about government oversight, accountability, and how much trust we place in those who claim to keep us safe. So buckle up, because as we untangle this story, we'll see how layers of secrecy, informant deployment, and delayed disclosures collide to create a moment of reckoning for America's top law enforcement agency. Let's rewind. January 6, 2021, the Capitol is stormed, and 2 pipe bombs are discovered, sending shockwaves through the nation. Over the next 2 years, the public hears only fragments about the investigation. The FBI keeps details close, citing ongoing inquiries and operational security. Fast forward to late 2024, an Inspector General report drops breadcrumbs, hinting at the presence of informants inside the Capitol. But it's not until March 2025 that the bombshell truly detonates. Kash Patel releases documents confirming those suspicions. Now, you might be thinking, why did it take so long for the truth to surface? That's the million-dollar question. Delayed transparency fuels suspicion and lays the groundwork for political and legal fallout. In just a few years, we've gone from vague official statements to a full-blown congressional inquiry. This timeline isn't just a sequence of date sheets, a roadmap for how government secrecy can backfire. It's a classic example of the butterfly effect in public institutions. One concealed fact can trigger a cascade of institutional crises. Let's step back and dissect the FBI's position using SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. At its core, the FBI's strength lies in its unparalleled surveillance capabilities and its ability to embed confidential sources. Think of them as undercover operatives or digital chameleons blending into extremist groups. But here's the catch. These strengths can quickly morph into weaknesses. The lack of transparency and delayed disclosures create a vacuum of trust. And when informants cross into restricted areas, the line blurs. Are they gathering intel, or are they crossing ethical boundaries? Now, this crisis also opens up opportunities. Could this be the catalyst for real oversight reform? Enhanced interagency coordination and better public messaging could help rebuild credibility. Yet, the threats are real and immediate. Political weaponization of law enforcement and the risk of legal or reputational fallout loom large. Think of it as a high-stakes chess match where every move is scrutinized and the margin for error is razor-thin. As the dust settles, the question remains, will the FBI adapt and evolve, or will public confidence erode further? Now, let's break down the FBI's approach using the MOST framework: mission, objectives, strategy, tactics. The mission is clear: ensure national security and uphold the law, especially after an unprecedented attack on the Capitol. Their objectives? To investigate the January 6th events thoroughly, leaving no stone unturned. That brings us to strategy: deploying informants, gathering intelligence, and eventually releasing findings to the public and Congress. But what about tactics? These are the actionable steps: document handovers, media briefings, and congressional cooperation. Each small move fits into the grander scheme, almost like a military operation where every action is mapped out for maximum effect. Now, you might wonder, if the strategy is so thorough, why did the public feel blindsided? That's the conflict. When strategy doesn't translate into transparent communication, perception gaps widen. Resolution? Only when agencies align not just their actions, but their messaging, because in the digital age, information flow is as crucial as operational success. Time to widen our lens with a pestle analysis, looking at political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legal factors. Politically, this is a powder keg. Congressional scrutiny is ramping up, with GOP leaders demanding answers and proposing new oversight measures. Economically, investigations demand resources, think budget reallocations and staff hours diverted from other national security priorities. Socially, we're facing a trust deficit. Americans increasingly question the integrity of their institutions, which can fuel polarization and conspiracy theories. Technologically, the FBI's use of surveillance tools and data analytics is a double-edged sword. These tools can detect threats, but also raise concerns about privacy and misuse. Now, you might be asking, what about legal consequences? Well, congressional hearings and potential lawsuits are already on the table, and agency leaders could be called to testify under oath. Environmental factors might not be in play here, but the remaining domains show just how multidimensional the fallout could be. Let's dissect the FBI's predicament through the sharp lens strategy: hurdles, actions, results, purpose. The agency's strategy is to reveal the truth and restore credibility, but hurdles abound: political backlash, internal resistance, and a relentless news cycle. So, what actions are they taking? Releasing documents, testifying before Congress, and engaging with the media. But every action has a reaction, and the result so far is public shock and renewed investigations. Now, imagine you're an FBI analyst. You want to maintain operational secrecy, but you're also under orders to be transparent. That's a classic case of mission conflict. Purpose drives the resolution here: transparency and accountability in law enforcement. If the FBI can deliver on those, maybe, just maybe, it can start to rebuild public trust. But as the saying goes, trust is hard to earn and easy to lose, especially when the stakes are this high. Let's move to the SPEAR framework: situation, problem, effect, action, result. The situation. The FBI is under a national microscope for its role in the January 6th investigation. The problem? Alleged concealment of informant involvement during a historic crisis. The effect has been swift and severe. Public outrage, political fallout, and a media frenzy that shows no sign of slowing down. The action taken? Handing over documents, engaging with Congress, and fielding tough questions from journalists. Now, if you're wondering about the result, it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, there are renewed calls for reform and oversight. On the other, the FBI's institutional reputation has taken a hit. This is a textbook example of how a single event like the delayed disclosure of informant actions can cascade into a national reckoning. So, will this moment trigger lasting change, or will the cycle of outrage and reform repeat itself? Let's connect the dots with a cause and effect chain. The riot happens, pipe bombs are discovered, the FBI investigates but keeps critical details under wraps. An Inspector General report hints at informant involvement, and finally, documents confirm it. The immediate effect? Public shock and congressional inquiries. But the ripple effect is even broader: questions about FBI credibility, suspicions of political bias, and the risk of institutional breakdown. Now, you might say, isn't secrecy sometimes necessary in national security? Absolutely. But when secrecy turns into obfuscation, trust evaporates, and conspiracy theories find fertile ground. That's where cognitive dissonance, a psychological term for holding conflicting belief stakes, hold in the public psyche. In the long run, every layer of secrecy peels away another layer of public faith. The outcome? A society less willing to believe in its own institutions. So, the conflict here isn't just about facts, it's about the invisible threads holding our democracy together. The political dominoes are falling fast. With these revelations, expect a surge in congressional oversight, more hearings, more subpoenas, and a flurry of legislative proposals aimed at reforming law enforcement transparency. Election integrity debates are back in full force, especially with new allegations of foreign interference. China's name is now in the mix, adding an international dimension to the storm brewing in Washington. Leadership shakeups could be on the horizon. If further documents implicate senior officials, pressure for resignations, or even structural reforms at the FBI and DOJ will mount. Imagine the headlines if top brass are forced out amid public uproar. Now, some of you might ask, is this just political theater, or will it lead to real change? The answer depends on how deep Congress is willing to dig and how committed the public is to demanding answers. The resolution to this act? Watch for the introduction of new reform bills and a power struggle over who gets to set the terms of accountability. Let's pivot to the legal and institutional front. Whistleblower protections are now under the spotlight. Expect new laws to safeguard insiders who risk everything to expose government missteps. Judicial investigations could force courts to review the legality of FBI actions, especially concerning informant deployment and intelligence suppression. That's what lawyers call precedent-setting litigation, and it could redefine agency boundaries for years. Agency reform isn't just a buzzword. It could mean real audits, restructuring of intelligence protocols, and stricter oversight from Congress. Now, here's a hypothetical. If you were an FBI agent, would you be more cautious about following protocol, or would you fear a chilling effect that hinders vital investigations? The resolution lies in striking a balance, enforcing accountability without paralyzing the institution's core mission. Let's talk about the human side, the societal impact. When trust in federal agencies crumbles, polarization deepens. Public confidence is already at historic lows, and every new revelation chips away at the foundation. Conspiracy narratives gain traction as ambiguity persists. The technical term here is information vacuum. When facts are scarce, rumors fill the gap. Social media algorithms amplify outrage, and suddenly, two Americas are living in parallel realities. Media polarization compounds the problem. Coverage splits along ideological lines, shaping public perception in dramatically different ways. One network calls it a scandal, another calls it a witch hunt. Where does the truth lie? Now you might be thinking, how do we restore trust? It starts with transparency, impartial investigations, and a media ecosystem that values facts over clicks. But until then, the resolution is elusive, and the cycle of mistrust continues to feed itself. Finally, let's zoom out. The FBI's credibility crisis isn't just a domestic issue, it's a geopolitical flashpoint. Allegations of Chinese interference will likely prompt broader investigations into foreign election meddling, raising the stakes for global cybersecurity. America's global reputation is on the line. Allies are watching closely, questioning the integrity of U.S. democratic institutions. Now, imagine you're a foreign diplomat. Do you trust America's intelligence, sharing protocols after this? It's a classic case of reputational contagion where one institution's failure taints the whole system. The conflict here is between national resilience and global skepticism. Can the U.S. demonstrate accountability without fueling adversarial propaganda? Resolution will hinge on robust reforms, transparent communication, and a renewed commitment to the rule of law both at home and abroad. So, where do we go from here? The timeline for the next year is packed. Congressional hearings will intensify, whistleblowers will testify, and more documents may see the light of day. DOJ's internal review could uncover even more surprises. By early 2026, expect legislative proposals for FBI reform and fresh battles over election narrative control. Public trust surveys will measure the fallout, and the results will shape the political landscape heading into the next election cycle. Now, let's be real. Rebuilding trust isn't an overnight fix. It requires systemic changes, honest dialogue, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. So, I'll leave you with a challenge. Stay informed, ask tough questions, and remember that in a democracy, accountability starts with us, the engaged citizenry. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Until next time, keep questioning, keep listening, and never settle for easy answers.